we are now live, and people will start joining. We will be able to see the counter.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to this parallel session on transformative finance for inclusive and resilient local food systems. It's an exciting panel with a very representative membership of panelists who will talk about the issues of innovative finance in the context of local food systems. Just to remind you that this parallel session aims to share knowledge and experience in designing and implementing funding mechanisms such as various blended finance facilities that provide a customized mix of business development services, project development, and finance structuring services, as well as access to affordable financial products. This is, of course, in the interest of creating more resilient and more sustainable local finance systems. As we know, one thing that the ongoing COVID-19 crisis has demonstrated is how vulnerable international supply systems are and what impact it may have on import of various foodstuffs and therefore on local food security. So the session will focus on the importance of leveraging the right mix of finance and at affordable rate for last mile groups to enhance productive capacities in local food systems in order to strengthen their resilience to shocks and stresses to ensure that we leave no one behind. By providing seed capital in the form of concessional loans, grants, reimbursable grants, and so on and so forth, funds can be made available for locally owned projects, including gender and youth-sensitive incubation projects, as well as food security and sustainability impacts along agricultural value chains to increase local food production and diversify and strengthen resilience of local food systems, particularly in developing regions. A couple of household issues before we start with the opening panel. As you know, we have a very tight time schedule, only 50 minutes, so I will request the speakers to keep to the allotted time. And you may have noticed that we will have a Q&A session at the end. I will request the attendees to submit their questions in the chat box. Please mention your name and organization, as well as the person to whom the question should be directed. And at the end of the session, when the Q&A time comes, we will direct your questions to the relevant panelists. Allow me now to give the floor to our own Executive Secretary, Preeti Sinha, who will come with a pre-recorded message. I will say a few words before actually allowing her to talk. I've mentioned that she is the UNCDF Executive Secretary, but she is also a global experienced investment and development banker with a 30-year track record associated with raising and managing institutional, public, and private development capital. She served as CEO and president of FFD Financing for Development, a specialist development finance firm focused on financing for UN SDGs, and she has played a very important role in the World Economic Forum and in other initiatives aiming at financing for development. So over, and the floor goes to our Executive Secretary, Ms. Preeti Sinha.
His Excellency, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture for Uganda, distinguished representatives, delegates, colleagues, and friends. I am pleased to be here today in this session that we have jointly organized with our partner, the World Food Programme, and to bring together a diverse array of partners to discuss key issues which are important levers of change for the food systems under the topic, Transformative Finance for Inclusive and Resilient Local Food Systems. At the UN Capital Development Fund, where we aspire to be the UN's flagship financing agency for the least developed countries, LDCs, we work tirelessly to find financial models that can work both for the public and private sector partners. Food security is one such thematic area where innovative financing solutions at the local level have proven capacity to achieve sustainable impact. Therefore, food security is one of the key issues that UNCDF addresses. In many developing regions, poverty and food insecurity levels are pervasive, and livelihoods depend heavily on food systems, which often constitute the main source for employment and income. In these countries, therefore, it is a strong positive correlation between the development objectives and the food system transformation and the food security and nutrition outcomes. Our approach is to offer last mile finance models, including in the area of food systems and food security. This means that we work and invest where few other development finance organizations operate. This means that we have a high tolerance for risk and an appetite for innovation. Our unique capital mandate at the UN Capital Development Fund allows us to use a full range of financial tools and instruments, including grants as well as loans and guarantees, in combination with technical assistance, capacity development, and policy support. Additionally, our experience shows that the mobilization of private capital can be achieved more effectively if concessional capital is coupled with capacity development and targeted technical assistance, to which our investees and local financial institutions can apply, and with whom we work to build this further. To support LDCs develop financial systems to reach the last mile, our business model embeds the need for investments that are both impactful and financially sustainable. Such duality could not be more important when it comes to food systems that require context-specific approaches with the capacity to drive strong collaboration between the public sector, business actors, as well as civil society and local governments. Therefore, building food systems on inclusivity and resilience implies the need for the right mix of financing instruments and at an affordable rate along the entire agricultural value chain. Such finance instruments must work in ways that connect local governments with local actors, build inclusion and resilience, and continue the localization of SDGs while sustaining peace. This is especially important in fragile, food insecure, and last mile contexts, where managing geographic disparities and building resilience to shocks and poverty reduction by empowering women and youth must be holistically addressed. More to the point, providing seed capital in the form of concessional loans, grants, and reimbursable grants can unlock a whole of society approach to building local food systems by prioritizing investments to peace dividends along the agricultural value chain through gender and youth-sensitive incubation projects. Such approach would directly support locally owned programs, bringing together different strains of society, including local governments, the private sector, civil society organizations, and women-owned organizations, to co-create sustainable solutions to increase local food production and diversification to strengthen resilience of the most vulnerable, particularly in the last mile context. By promoting territorial and place-based focused approaches to food security, UNCDF has generated a number of lessons learned, including from its Finance for Food, the F4F program, on the best ways to support food security and nutrition. This includes our experience in leveraging locally driven investments, utilizing a combination of instruments, notably local development funds, public-private partnership, structured project finance, and SME finance. All of these have a transformative impact on food security. In particular, the START facility is a result of our partnership with the government of Uganda and the EU, for which a video will be shown presently after this session, after this presentation. it is the perfect example showcasing how blended finance solutions can unlock shared prosperity at the local level with enhanced local food chains, local revenue generation, youth and women's economic empowerment, sitting at the center of the so needed economic transformation for the LDCs. As of today, 108 food security investment projects, among which 42 projects received technical and financial support, structuring due diligence and de-risking, and 15 of those projects successfully passed through our local development dual key system, reaching investment readiness stage and financial closure. In line with the Decade of Action, the Local 2030 Initiative, and the UN Food Systems Summit, UNCDF will continue to design and innovate and implement funding mechanisms, such as blended finance facilities, by providing a customized mix of business development services, project development, and finance structuring services, as well as access to affordable financial products. I trust that this parallel session will be instrumental and an opportunity for coalition building around critical topics that might need a greater focus and attention, like resilience to food supply chains, local food production for local consumption. UNCDF, as co-lead of this proto-coalition, is ready and willing to support member countries in building programmatic frameworks to tailor, design, and implement game changers, including in developed countries, but especially in the developing countries. Now, allow me to pass the floor to the moderator and to our partners to share their experiences and groundbreaking solutions to food systems. I look forward to being inspired by all the great work that you are doing for the people that we serve. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Ms. Sinha for highlighting UNCDF experiences, and particularly the focus on blended finance vehicles, on the impact assessment systems, the dual key impact assessment system that UNCDF is applying, as well as the special efforts undertaken by the organization to engage and strengthen the participation of women and youth in local food security systems. I'm very pleased to introduce now our next speaker and panelist, Mr. David Cartridge, who is Director of Humanitarian and Development Program at the World Food Program. You can find his short bio in the chat box. So over to you, Mr. Cartridge.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator, and thank you for Executive Secretary for those inspiring words delivered by video. And greetings to all, good morning, and thanks for making the effort this early in the morning, at least here in Rome, to be with us today. Very conscious of time, Chair. Let me try to be brief. First of all, very excited that we have this dialogue this morning, which is of course a point in time, and we hope this dialogue will continue beyond. This topic rests inside Action Track 5, where WFP is the UN anchor agency, as we I think all know, and we were excited in that role by being able to bring to bear our operational experience, deep field connectivity, particularly in fragile contexts, which really speak to that last mile orientation that we're promoting here. And of course, we're working all the time with communities and marginalized communities and national governments in their ability to keep food systems going, to build resilience for that last mile in the face of shocks and stresses, and ultimately, when there are those occurrences, to build back better. Now, the Coalition on Resilient Food Supply Chains, or Local Production for Local Consumption, that was referenced by the Executive Secretary, is been incubating in Action Track 5, and we're promoting this at the pre-summit event here, and hope to launch this as a full-fledged coalition in September with a robust member state lead. But key to that is the partnership with UNCDF. And we're very pleased about this partnership. Yesterday, in the plenary session here in Rome, we were urged, all of us, to forge new partnerships that bring synergies and contribute to the whole effort. In fact, partnership was quite central to the dialogue yesterday, and leveraging the investment mandate of UNCDF with the program and operational presence and capabilities of WFP, we feel is very much in line with forging these new synergetic type of partnerships. Now, with WFP, we've also advanced in recent times. We have a landmark policy that our executive board approved where we could leverage the millions of tons of local procurement, particularly with smallholder farmers, for developmental objectives, not just seeking the lowest price, but also now seeking development objectives. This has opened up a whole new space and a whole new set of techniques. So obviously there's an opportunity to advance some of what we're talking about today, but also I want everyone to be aware that as we develop new techniques, we will make these available and approaches to this new way of working. We'll make these available as public goods for public procurement, where we have a huge opportunity to make an impact well beyond WFP. Now, complementing this work is also, as a kind of spin-off, we've been designing blended finance pilot projects. We're in our infancy here, but we are already extending loans to agri-SMEs, smallholder farmers, with the aim of optimizing access to food for the most vulnerable population, with a particular emphasis on women, youth, and children. And these program designs are done with a strong gender lens. So we ensure the economic empowerment of women and also youth, and target smallholder farmers with the focus, of course, on building resilience and environmental sustainability in the remotest of areas, oftentimes in those fragile settings. Now, through the partnerships with private sector, we enabled smallholder farmers to access digital finance services, including mobile money services, agricultural-based digital financial services, and digital savings wallets. Digitization of rural areas is a priority tool to integrate remote households to the economy, also enabling states to provide services, basic services, and social protection to those very remote areas. Now, in the face of an increasingly multi-hazard world, we're also looking at ways where we can help vulnerable communities manage an increasingly complex layered set of risks. And we're doing this through investment in disaster risk reduction activities, by providing training on post-harvest losses, financial education, and by scaling up indexed insurance schemes where we are actually reaching scale in many instances. Now, Mr. Moderator, just to conclude here, we, of course, this theme, this motif of partnership we see as key. And aside from the UNCDF, we've also been working with increasing the World Bank and the International Finance Corporation, IFC, which we think can also contribute to this effort. And what we've been doing more specifically that is interesting is they've been providing solid governance and financial management training and coaching to the cooperatives we're working with at that community level to enable them to cope with managing an increasingly set of assets, but also very new financial instruments such as insurance schemes and so on. So these partnerships, I think, will also be important to be aware of. And finally, my comment would be, as we embark on this, we are clearly oriented towards innovation, generating new approaches. We as a group should invest in information and knowledge exchange so that anything we learn and innovate can be easily replicated and scaled across the various contexts we work in. So with that, I know we're pressed for time, so I look forward to maintaining this dialogue right through the pre-summit and beyond, and of course through New York and beyond that. So thank you, Chair, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cartridge. And it was a very interesting presentation. Thank you for emphasizing your commitment to cooperation and collaboration with other agencies, as well as highlighting a number of innovations by WFP, including some blended finance approaches, digitization, index insurance, and other very interesting things that definitely contribute to strengthened local food systems. Now allow me to give the floor to our next speaker, who is Carlo Montesi, Director for the Green Deal and Digital Agenda, Directorate General for International Partnership, coming from the European Commission. Over to you, Ms. Montesi.
Many thanks, Dimitri, and good morning to you all. I'm very pleased to participate in this session and to share with you some EU experience in this domain. Allow me to say that, of course, improving productive capacity at the local level is clearly the core of rural development, and we really believe that it's a powerful driver for change. So investing in the resilience, in the market participation of a small-scale producer and the processor can make a difference, and it's clearly a priority of our European Union cooperation with our partners. At the European Commission, we have been working together with development finance institution and with the European Investment Bank to develop innovative financing instrument and risk-sharing instrument exactly to boost investment in rural, small and medium enterprise in agribusiness, to attract further private investment into the agriculture, also into this last mile that we are discussing. If I have to share some project, some experience, allow me first to mention, for example, the ABC Fund that we have set up in collaboration with IFAD, with AGRA, and with the government of Luxembourg. The ABC Fund offers direct funding to cooperatives and small and medium enterprise in an underfinanced but profitable segment of agribusiness value chain. And of course, it works on further improving access to financial services and the technical assistance facility, enabling the small and medium enterprise to access new business development opportunities. Of course, this can generate, as you can imagine, jobs for rural women and the youth, and also develop a sustainable agriculture initiative with, in our side, focus on climate change adaptation solution. One second example could be the AgriFi facility that provides long-term financing to medium and small enterprise in the agri-food value chain involving the smallholders farms. And one of the examples, just to take a concrete example, it's the loan that we have provided to Babangona in the northern Nigeria. Babangona is an agricultural, socially responsible private company that provides a wide range of services to its network of smallholder members. This way, more than 10,000 smallholders are able to benefit from a €5 million loan provided by the AgriFi facility. So with some small finance provided at the European level through European financing instrument, we can cover many smallholders members that are in contact with the financial institution. One other case could be the START program that we are developing with the government of Uganda and with UNCDF. I'm quite sure that will be mentioned later, that its design has a blended financing facility that will provide a customized mix of business development service, project development, and financial services to small and medium enterprise engaged in the agriculture. Now, of course, allow me to say that all this domain is absolutely not an easy task. Investment support program has been proven take time to set up and require clearly long-term engagement. We can draw many lessons, I will have to say, from our the last 3 years experience on this innovative finance. Allow me just to mention three key lessons. One is clearly about, in this domain, it's not only about productive capacity, but it's also about the entire business environment. So investment support program needs clearly to be part of a wider approach to improve the business environment. Second, it has been proven difficult to effectively provide finance at a large scale to small producers. So clearly a mix of private and public sources is clearly needed in this domain, in the food and agricultural sector. Finally, I will say investment, it was already mentioned, but it's clear that investment support needs to be accompanied by technical assistance to clearly assist also the small business in developing sound proposal, because a sound proposal through our financial institution, it's clearly the lack and the missing point. So allow me maybe to end just to say that, of course, the European Union will remain fully committed to continue to work to use innovative financing instrument, in de-risking instrument, guarantees, and the blended finance to support public authorities, and also to try to attract private investment in this challenging food and agricultural sector, also in the most fragile areas. We are fully engaging in this, and of course, we will move into concrete action immediately after the summit, and very happy to give the European contribution to all the debate in the summit. Over to you, Dimitri. Many thanks.
Thank you so much, Carla, for this very interesting presentation, as well as for sharing with us some emerging lessons learned about how to support agricultural production, agricultural processing, including building the overall business environment. I can't agree more. It's very important, as well as applying a mix of public and private support and sources, and increasing technical assistance to improve the capacity of enterprises, particularly micro, small, and medium ones, to be able to compete and to move into a stage where they can operate productively their assets. And of course, as you've just said, it requires a long-term sustained engagement with a number of partners. And thank you so much for mentioning the START facility. We are very happy to cooperate with the EU in Uganda on this facility. And this is probably a very opportune moment to give the floor to our colleague from Uganda, Dr. Patience Rwamegiza, Assistant Commissioner for Extension Services at the Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry, and Fisheries. Over to you, Doctor. Dr. Rwamegiza, if you are trying to talk, you may be muted.
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share experiences of, in terms of, when I looked at the topic of transformative financial for inclusive and resilient local food systems, I was impressed and happy to be part of this panel to share the experiences with regard to the Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry, and Fisheries. I first of all, I must apologize because for on behalf of the minister who was supposed to attend, but received a last-minute call from His Excellency the President for an urgent meeting, and he asked me to represent him, and I hope I will live to the task. When I looked at this topic, and we're looking at the last mile community, from the agricultural perspective, I thought we needed to first understand and contextualize what is this community? What are the key challenges facing the last mile community? And when we look at the key challenges facing the last mile community, who are largely smallholder farmers, access to affordable agricultural inputs is a major challenge. There is a weak or near absence of extension services. And these issues are practically uniform across the entire sub-Saharan Africa. Weak farm organizations. And when you look at this, most of these farm organizations are really not business-oriented organizations. And most of them, in most cases, depend on donations to run their activities. And you have outdated production tools. I think Africa remains the continent where the hoe is practically the main source of the major tool of production. Then they are characterized by market failures. And this is where all these issues we are going to discuss rotate around. Because of market failures, it is very difficult to have sustainable production. It is very difficult to have specialized agriculture because you find farmers moving from one enterprise to another depending on the different, on the market environment. And therefore, the specialization of the farming community in a particular commodity is undermined. We have the access to credit, agricultural credit, is really one of the greatest challenging problem facing the smallholder farmers. And because of that, the financial institutions, because of most of the financial sector is highly liberalized, the available interest rates on the market can never favor agriculture. Because studies have found that for agriculture to be profitable, farmers must access credit at not less than 6%, at not more than 6% of interest rate. But if you observe the interest rates of that are available in the market, you find they're between 14 to 33. That kind of, in other words, it makes the farmers are perpetually working for financial institutions. And the vicious cycle of poverty remains at community level. When you look at the issue of, because of the absence of financing, investment in post-harvest handling facilities is limited. So there are a lot of post-harvest handling losses, post-harvest losses. And because of that vicious cycle, even the saving culture at community level is weak. Hardly, you cannot see even the saving culture is weak. And there is near absence of value addition at community, that last mile community. So all these, you find this is a kind of community that has now been subjected to market forces and the vagaries of nature, climate change. So all this has compounding all this, you find what the local communities here, when you go in these local areas, they tell me they are only eating to live, but not living to eat.
Apologies, Doctor, can you please wrap up?
Excuse me?
Apologies, can you please wrap up?
Okay. Now, out of this, now government of Uganda has come up with a number of policy instruments, financial policy instruments. We have the microfinance policy, the agricultural credit facility, the National Agricultural Insurance Scheme, the National Financial Inclusion Strategy, the strategy for financial literacy, and even the capital markets development master plan. But all these policy instruments are being implemented in piecemeal, in project mode, and not sustainable. And as a Minister of Agriculture, there are certain, for the last mile communities, we have experimented a number of financial inclusion strategies. We have provided some matching grants to farm organizations, supporting them and building their capacity in business development services. We have provided subsidized inputs And originally there were free inputs, but we are transitioning from free inputs to subsidized system. And we have recently, in view of all this, we have introduced, we have been working with the World Bank and introduced the e-voter system for farmers to access subsidized inputs. And we hope this will help us to alleviate those last mile conditions. But also, the government of Uganda is also looking innovatively what kind of institutional innovations and what kind of can we do to ensure that we're able to reach the last mile, this last mile access financial services. And we are planning to put in place a revolving fund at community level. In what, our lowest unit at administrative unit at community level is called the parish. And therefore, the government of Uganda has come up with a parish development model in which they are trying to introduce a revolving fund for communities to access financing at that level, that last mile community, to access financing at negligible interest rates, because the macroeconomic policy does not allow change in these interest rates easily. So we are saying we go at community level. Government of Uganda is producing a program to provide a revolving fund to support for financial inclusion, to ensure that these last mile communities are able to access financing. So thank you very much. I'm sorry for taking long.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Again, thank you for highlighting the challenge of access to affordable finance, particularly for smallholders and last mile populations, as well as the measures and approaches that the government of Uganda is taking, including subsidized inputs, matching grants, and the new parish development model, which also includes a revolving fund at the community level. Thank you so much. Now, just to remind you, colleagues, please write your questions in the chat box if you have questions to the panelists. They are remaining with us until the end of this session. Now we are moving to the next session, which is about presenting country, region, and private sector experiences in transformative financing. And we will start with a very short video that showcases the Uganda program focusing on private sector food producers. UNCDF, together with our partners, PSFU, the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda, and the Uganda Development Bank, has been running a START facility, a facility that brings technical assistance and concessional capital to small and medium enterprises engaged in value addition activities and agribusinesses. This facility focuses on northern Uganda because the issue of support to agriculture and value addition is particularly topical for that area. It has been, in terms of access to capital and in terms of technical assistance, neglected for some time. And based on our analysis, the SMEs from that region experience particularly acute difficulties in starting or expanding their businesses.
The challenges we had before this intervention was the quality of the grain from our farmers in terms of impurities in the grain, and then insect infestation. When you find a lot of those beetles and what have you in the grains, and then also the moisture content of the grain. The equipment we have got, we hope it will help to improve on that, such that we shall have enough quantity to store to the quality we want. Since we have a dryer, we have a cleaner, and then the silo where we can control our own temperature, we can control our quality for a certain period of time. Like now, when we we get maize in the first season, we can keep that maize up to the second season, and then we continue production throughout the year. Before the project, we were on average producing about 100 tons of maize meal per annum. But when now we go in full-fledged with this new intervention, we can talk of 500 tons.
From the training we learned from the Ghana grain miller, post-harvest handling, where we know how to harvesting a crop from the garden and to bring it home, maintaining from the store. What we have seen after training, coming back from the training, we know how to specifying a crop from the garden. We cannot mix a crop with other crop. It's help because we are now here harvesting a good yield.
Dimitri, you're on mute, Dimitri.
Thank you for the video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and you've also enjoyed the picture better than I did, because I could see only myself and not actually the other people who participated in this video. But it presented, if the picture was frozen, then just to let you know that it presented the experiences of two companies that UNCDF supported through its START facility. And to remind once again, this facility is funded by the European Union in Uganda. We are now moving to the next session, and I would like to invite our colleague, Dr. Edward Isingoma, who is the managing partner at the Pearl Capital Partners, a private equity firm. Over to you, Edward.
Yeah, thanks, Dimitri. Much appreciated, and in the interest of time, I'll keep this pretty short. Can you hear me? Dimitri, can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Good, good. I'll keep this very brisk. I'm very glad to have been invited to this panel discussion. At Pearl Capital, we manage the Yield Uganda Investment Fund, which is yet another European Union funded and supported project, which is a private equity fund that provides alternative financing structures for SMEs in the agri space, purely for Ugandan agri SMEs, and includes startups and a good mixture of support around BDS, also funded by the European Union and managed by the IFAD office in Kampala. So in the Yield Uganda Investment Fund, we have so far over the last 4 years done and closed 10 agribusinesses projects. And some of these have had startups, have had growing businesses in various value chains and sectors: coffee, poultry, inputs, food systems, certification, cassava production, and organic food production. For both the local and export markets, but also empowered a lot of the youth and women in rural livelihoods who are working with these SMEs in various scenarios. Today's presentation from me will only be 2 minutes. I will concentrate only on sharing an example, a case study that brings together various players. And when we got involved, this was an exciting project, very innovative project, which involves liquid egg production and processing. And this project is done by an SME called Pristine Foods Limited, which did introduce, it's the first of its kind in East Africa, to actually collect eggs from smallholder farmers, pasteurize, process them under very strict hygienic conditions, automate that process, and then distribute and sell liquid egg products to the local market and the regional market, because it's the first of its kind in the region. When we first looked at this project 3.5 years ago, one of the key challenges was it was a startup, it needed capital, it needed BDS, it needed setup capital, which we were ready to provide, but it didn't have sufficient securities. It didn't have sufficient systems and capacity processes to grow. It needed technical assistance from foreign countries where liquid egg production has already been successful, say Europe and the US. And we were able to rally our troops, get capital from the Yield Uganda Investment Fund invested in form of both private equity and debt, but we were also able to engage UNCDF and get a guarantee scheme that allowed us to provide sufficient capex to initiate the project. We were also then able to engage IFAD and the European Union to provide the much needed DDS support, which has enabled the project setup and launch the first of its kind innovative product in the market. We now are no longer scared. I believe the government is very glad that we have this project, because what this then means, if bird flu was to come today, the farmers would not have to throw away their eggs. They have a facility where they can take the eggs, and the eggs will be turned into a pasteurization process that will kill the bird flu, and will continue exporting the eggs to Kenya or even in the region, despite the challenges around the pandemic, where the tourism and the hotel effects have slowed down the growth of this project. So this is a case example that is a project that has brought private, public sector money and players in place and working on this. And with the support of the EU, we were also able to attract in the fund itself, the Yield Fund, the Local Pension Fund, National Social Security Fund, to actually make its first investment in the agri space, which was never the case in previous periods. Thank you, Dimitri. I'll leave it at that, and in the interest of time, I'll let you proceed. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Edward. We've been very happy to cooperate with you on the Pristine project, and we hope there will be more projects like this going ahead. Again, I believe one important point that you've made was that we would need to realize that different projects require different type of support, that often syndicated financing is the only way to make sure that the project gets the type of finance that it can afford and the type of finance that can really get it moving. With this, I would like to move to our next panelist, who is Mr. Tierno Sakho, délégation de l'entrepreneuriat rapide pour les femmes et les jeunes de Sénégal. Parole à vous, Monsieur Sakho.
Bonjour. Je vais parler en français. Merci.
Oui, bien sûr.
Très bien. Donc, Tierno Sakho, je suis directeur adjoint des investissements à la délégation à l'entrepreneuriat rapide des jeunes et des femmes. La délégation à l'entrepreneuriat rapide des jeunes et des femmes est une agence étatique qui est en charge de l'accompagnement des jeunes et des femmes entrepreneurs, qui est logée au sein du cabinet du président de la République, M. Macky Sall. C'est une agence qui a été créée il y a 3 ans de cela pour accompagner l'entrepreneuriat de manière générale au Sénégal, avec un fort focus sur les femmes et les jeunes et aussi le monde rural. Donc, à date d'aujourd'hui, nous avons accompagné plus de 100 000 entrepreneurs au Sénégal avec des financements qui vont de petits financements en nanocrédit, en microcrédit et des financements aux TPE, PME pour éventuellement pouvoir en former des futurs champions régionaux à l'échelle. Nous avons aussi un fonds dédié au numérique et à l'innovation, et donc nous investissons en equity, en dette sur des startups qui sont sur des filières comme les filières de l'agriculture et de la technologie. Depuis 1 an et demi, nous sommes dans cette approche, on va dire, de partenariat pour leverager sur les ressources étatiques, d'où des partenariats forts que nous avons avec l'Agence française de développement à travers un programme qui est le programme PAVI, avec la BAD, avec la Gates Foundation. Et je m'en vais vous présenter un nouveau programme que nous avons avec UNCDF pour accompagner les farmers qui sont dans la zone du bassin de la Gambie, du fleuve Gambie, à pouvoir en tout cas les aider à accéder à des financements avec un mécanisme blended entre nous, la DER, UNCDF, et nos partenaires bancaires, que sont entre autres la Banque agricole et la BNDE. Donc, pour revenir sur ce programme très structurant que nous allons sûrement bientôt annoncer de manière officielle, le mécanisme, c'est quoi? C'est à travers un grant de UNCDF de $200 000, plus une participation de la DER à hauteur de $200 000, nous avons pu structurer une ligne de financement de $1 million. Donc, ces $400 000 qui sont constitués de part et d'autre de la DER et de l'UNCDF ont permis de leverager auprès du système bancaire local cette ligne de financement, donc d'où un mécanisme quelque part de garantie de portefeuille qui nous permet d'adresser une cible qui naturellement n'aurait pas permis à la banque, s'il n'y avait pas en tout cas cet apport de nos deux institutions, de pouvoir adresser ces cibles qui sont dans des zones reculées et qui derrière ont très peu accès, on va dire, à des circuits de financement. L'autre intérêt en tout cas de ce programme, c'est que oui, nous voulons accompagner les agriculteurs, mais nous avons pensé aller sur des tickets un peu plus importants. Je veux dire, il y a des tickets naturels que nous faisons en général à la DER qui sont des tickets de $500, de $1,000, de $2,000, de $3,000, de $4,000 qui permettent principalement de financer, on va dire, les besoins d'exploitation. Dans ce 10 programme, nous avons voulu aller sur des tickets un peu plus importants où ça permet, on va dire, à des agriculteurs ou à des groupements d'agriculteurs ou à des fédérations d'aller sur des investissements un peu plus structurants. Donc là, on parle de tickets moyens de $20 000, $30 000, $40 000, $50 000, permettant à ces acteurs, via leur fédération ou via leur groupement d'intérêt économique, d'aller sur des investissements structurants et donc de pouvoir changer la donne et leur situation économique. Donc, plus tout le dispositif d'accompagnement, de renforcement de capacité qui sera ça, et aussi l'accompagnement à l'accès au marché. Donc, cette première phase que nous aurons avec, nous l'espérons très rapidement, opérationnaliser ça avec UNCDF. Si, en tout cas, c'est une expérience qui s'avère intéressante, nous permettra nous-mêmes, au niveau étatique, de pouvoir engager des discussions avec d'autres partenaires privés, que ce soit de grands groupes corporés, que ce soit d'autres bailleurs, pour aller à l'échelle sur ce modèle très structurant où nous avons constaté un appétit de plus en plus intéressant aussi des banques et des institutions de microfinance. Donc, en résumé, c'est ce que je voulais partager de la DER et de l'agence que je représente. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. And thank you so much for sharing with us the experiences from Senegal, and in particular, the combination, the application of such an instrument as portfolio guarantees that is extended to participate in banking institutions in combination with technical assistance and business development services extended to particularly last mile populations and disadvantaged groups. So that was a very interesting experience. Allow me now to invite our next and last panelist, who is Mr. Martin Bwalia, Acting Director, Knowledge Management and Program Evaluation Directorate at NEPAD. Over to you, Mr. Bwalia.
Good morning to everybody, and I hope you can hear me.
Yes, yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I would definitely first just to acknowledge the invitation that we're very delighted from the African Union Development Agency to be part to this conversation, and acknowledge all the dignitaries. And I believe that actually everybody participating in this meeting is a dignitary, so welcome and looking forward to have this conversation. I go straight in my remarks, and I speak from the African Union perspective, and specifically the work that the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, is doing. So just a few points. Number one is that Africa has got a very long experience on development financing. We're talking about decades of experience in this area. And one thing that is unique in there compared to probably other continents is actually the role and the space that is occupied by development aid. And I'll speak to that a little bit. But why I've started here is to say, why are we having this discussion? If it's just to do, if everything is going okay, as we sometimes get to be informed, then maybe the issue is just to do more of what we're already doing. But we do know that actually there's also a lot more that can be done differently to leverage, to expand, to gain more, even from the actual financing that is available now, later on new and more financing. And I speak more from that point of view. One of the things we see from the countries, and I'll come back that there's a lot of attention to this area in Africa, is that the experience on the basis of development aid actually needs to change, and change radically. And this is both in terms of especially the issue of value for money from this financing that actually goes into the food systems, into agriculture, and into development, as it were. So what do I mean by changing radically is that, number one, development financing, and I'll speak to investments also from private sector, needs to get much more compatible with the transformational change. We know that a lot of the grants and development financing is actually done such that it's projects, they are short-term, etc., and therefore not exactly consistent with financing change that is long-term, that is systemic, and leads to building capacity and systems. So we need to go back to looking at how is our developing, financing architectures consistent with long-term objectives. And here is that we need to get a lot more of our development financing playing a catalytic role in financing for development. And what does that mean? This means that we need to increase domestic financing. Of course, how does that happen is a different issue. We need to ensure that what we talk about in terms of development aid, and we know development aid is diminishing whether we like it or not. So we have to look more about investments. And there, the issues that is in the interest of everybody, developed and developing countries, that we're talking about investment than aid. And lastly there is actually how do we ensure that what we are financing, and in this case, food systems, is actually consistent with the business values, business propositions, and the viable business for these communities. And I'm talking about is the financing generating value for the local economy? If not, in the short term especially, then there's something wrong with that financing. And here I want to point out to you that the African Union reform in the last 3 years had 2 objectives. And one objective was actually how to increase, expand domestic financing for development. And that brings me to my second last point, is actually to say, in that context then, there is some work to be done on the Africa side as well. It's not just from where the funding is coming from in terms of development aid. So the issue is about enhancing, building accountability to focus on value for money. And therefore, it's not just about volumes. Many times we're talking about volumes, but we're also here looking at how do we increase the value out of the dollar that is already available now. And this leads to 3 things I'll mention. One is planning capacity, especially in public institutions. It's also about strengthening evidence and data-based execution, as well as enhancing the credibility of public institutions as a credible partner in public-private collaboration. And that is an issue when you go to the ground, and actually when you look at practical engagements, that element, we take it for granted, but actually there is work to be done about credibility, in fact, is on both sides of private sector and public sector to go in the deals. And lastly, in conclusion, and very much specifically talking about financing for the last mile and the front line, actually was mentioned. Who are we talking about? These are not numbers. These are people, farmers, food vendors, processors, storage entities, transporters. And in Africa, you're talking about largely informal, actually quite significantly informal. Largely very huge part of it is the youth that are venturing out, women, and certainly many times organized in macro, small, medium enterprises. So what we talk about that, and from experience, these are not, it's not a charity space that needs to be helped. It's about how do we transform the business so that all these players actually can not just deliver food, but earn a living in terms of money in the pocket. So what I'm talking about here is how do we support and enhance the business wealth and competitiveness in this frontline space. And this leads to things like improving standards and packaging, marketing capabilities, arranging partnerships for business that allows mitigation of risks, economics of scale, and knowledge exchange. And this is what in the African Union Development Agency, actually, we have a program of 100,000 SMEs is our focus. And this is something that we are willing to collaborate and ensure that we go to critical mass in this effort. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Martin, for raising a number of critical systemic issues when we are talking about financing food systems. One issue I would like to highlight that has been mentioned by you is building the capacity of public institutions to engage with the private sector. Indeed, we are often trying to cajole and encourage the private sector to get more investments, but what we are forgetting is that we also need a strong and capable public sector for the private sector to be engaged and realize its potential. This is bringing us to the end of the second panel. Now, we are supposed to have Q&A. We are beyond our allotted time, but I would hate to finish this session without giving some opportunity to the panelists to respond. And in particular, I would like to choose one question that we have in the text box, which is addressed to any and all of the panelists, coming from Nancy Jane Balfin. And I'm going to request two colleagues who participated in the opening panel, David and Carla, to give a 1-minute response to this question, which is as follows. How can proven financial solutions that were implemented at a local level be scaled up? Who needs to be engaged to ensure scaling up occurs? And what changes, challenges have occurred in the previous attempts, or would be foreseen if scaling up has not yet been attempted to scale up these solutions? David, over to you, please. What do you think about it in 1 minute? How can we achieve scaling up of and making sustainable the solutions that we pilot and experiment with?
Yeah, well, first of all, we have to do a reality check. We are collectively in the infancy of developing innovation and proven techniques, hence my call for knowledge exchange and so on. However, that said, this issue is a fundamental one. It's a good question for you to select. And what I would say is it's back to partnership. Going into any of these ventures, you have to have a proper constellation of proper partnerships. That's private sector, public sector. I would agree with you, Dimitri. We have to look at the capacity of the public sector, the national government, to engage with the private sector. But it's key to have that constellation well established. I believe, and I've seen in my previous experience, the value of good piloting that is done very well designed with that constellation in mind. proven peer, reviewed and independent reviewed results that then lend the credibility. But having those partnership vested from the start is a key to scaling anything that you would introduce. And a lot of piloting is proven techniques that are done somewhere that are replicated in another environment. So I would say there's something in there that we would apply to this very area, which again is just starting on so many fronts. Over.
Thank you so much, David, for highlighting the importance of reality checks and incorporating the sustainability considerations in the design of various pilots from the beginning. Carla, over to you for your thoughts about the same issue.
Yes, many thanks, David, and thanks for the question. Allow me to say in 1 minute that you give to us, it's that, of course, scaling up requires sharing lesson learned, cooperation with partners across the board. When I was mentioning the lesson learned, you have already summed up. It's clear that we need a clear involvement of still public and the private sector. We need also to look to the business environment. We really need to support the small and medium enterprise also with technical assistance to build a good financing program. In our side, allow me to say once again that, of course, we really intend to scale up our innovative financial instrument, because in the next 7 years, we have foreseen in our budget up to 6 billion euro to support to guarantees and the blended finance, also this kind of investment. But lesson shared, lesson learned, shared will be key, and building on partners on this basis will be also key. Many thanks to you.
Thank you so much, Carla. Absolutely can't agree with you more. Cooperation and experience sharing is absolutely critical. And this is what I hope we are achieving during this session. I've seen Martin's hand up. Would you like to add something, Martin?
Just one actually point, and within your minute. One on the problem side, excellent question. One big problem Africa is having today is actually that there's massive, very good pilots which succeed attractively. And if you look back in the last 5 decades, the issue has been that these pilots disappear just as quickly as they came with their success. So that issue of scaling up and going to critical mass is important. Number two, how do we do it? I believe we can't scale up from outside. We need to do it from internal. And this is why it's important to also focus intentionally on building systemic capacities, capabilities, and incentives that come from inside. Africa has also got instruments today from the CFTA system to various other structures, CADA, that are actually built to support systemic capacity and building long-term change, and therefore getting to critical mass is a critical issue, and I hope that we give it the attention it needs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And of course, a big thank you to all our distinguished panelists and to all our participants. We've had over 70 participants throughout this event, even if we went almost 20 minutes beyond our allotted time slot. But thank you so much. We hope that you've enjoyed the session, and we hope that this was a useful contribution to the overall Food Security Summit and was also useful from the point of view of building coalitions, partnerships, and better understanding of how we can employ different financial instruments and different approaches to strengthen and diversify local food systems. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day or your evening, depending on where you are, and we hope to see you again. All the best.
Thank you.
Many thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Thank you.